A lot of your message has been focused on the business aspect of the Secretary of State's office. Part of what they handle is the securities regulations. Now, the securities, and that's where a lot of this financial crisis for you is rooted. What kind of regulations would you get rid of, kind of mindful of that?
You know, first off, I would not say that we're in this issue because of the securities industry. You know, some of the things were because of mortgage bankers and things of that nature. The securities industry is your brokerage houses, your brokerage firms. These are your Edward Jones, your Wells Fargo. Missouri is the second largest state in the country for headquarters of brokerage firms. They employ almost 99,000 brokers across the country. This is one of the few sectors that's actually added jobs in our state. And unfortunately, we're not going to go in and say we need to start repealing, regulations, because a lot of them are from the SEC and things of that nature. What we need to do is we need to say this is a viable industry that does a great job for people in saving for college and saving for your 401k and your retirement. And we need to have a Secretary of State that is not going to use them as a shakedown. Unfortunately, the current Secretary of State has treated this industry very poorly. She shut down a nationwide company for over a whole day, had to get themselves opened back up by a court order. She's consistently fining brokerage firms. She shows up with a TV camera and a subpoena on their front door and never even called and said, hey, we've had a complaint. And then she asked them to make a donation into the Investors Protection Fund, which is a fund that then she turns around and uses to buy radio ads on the Cardinal games, the Chiefs games, the Rams games, the Royals games, talking about how she's protecting seniors. And if you look in the last 10 years, $15 million has flown into this fund, and almost $7 million was spent in 2010. And that just happened to be the same year that she was running for U.S. Senate. So again, is if you just get someone in there that says, we're not going to treat this industry horribly, we're just going to be fair like we treat and regulate every other industry and not use it as a private slush fund, then you're going to see more jobs come to this state. That sector can continue to grow, so when people graduate and they can go out and they want to get into financial services, there's going to be a job and a viable industry for them to have applications in.
Scholler, calling it Stouffer.
That's all right. So, I think one area that we can make a difference for investors is in the smaller term investments. And matter of fact, I visit with folks, and right now, if you put together a business idea, business plan that's determined to be a good plan, right now underneath the current security rules, you're restricted to a very small pool of people, mostly just close friends and family especially. And I think there's an opportunity for me visiting with people who've been in the regulatory industry in the past when it comes to securities, to be able to open up that pool of investors, to let them to be able to take a great idea, which is going to hopefully be able to bring more jobs and more innovation to a local community, and be able to let them be able to let more folks be involved in that investment. So I think that's one area that we can make a definite difference in. And I certainly have heard a number of stories from people, just like Senator Roop said, I don't think any of us are unalike in this, and how we have a current Secretary of State who's playing gotcha regulatoryism. And she is, rather than trying to help people make sure they cross the T's and dot the I's correctly, the moment she finds the T's and I's crossed, then she's immediately thrown the book at them. And these are people who have been well respected in their communities, have worked hard to be able to build a reputation, a strong career, and it's gone overnight. And I'm not saying that there aren't many opportunities where she shut down a fraudulent investment practice. Absolutely, we know that's a part of that office, but I think there are probably some people who did not have the opportunity to be able to get their fair day and to be able to have an opportunity to be able to defend themselves as they should. We want to make sure that we give every opportunity to, one, enforce the environment, that people know that when they invest their hard-earned funds, that their money is going to be safeguarded. But two, that if you are a person who's out in the field and you have made a mistake, but not an intent to be able to impose fraud on somebody, that there's an opportunity to be able to work with them, that we do our best to be able to do that. And I think that's where you have to have someone who, it's almost like when you think about people with OSHA. How many times have you heard, on the workplace with OSHA, the number of regulations that have prohibited a good work environment going forward? And I think that's where we need to be careful in our securities environment too, that we have that environment, people know it's safe, but we also try to work with the investors to make sure they're well educated and know the environment in which they're trying to let people have the opportunity to be able to invest, and that they know the rules from day one and they don't get changed on them.
Well, there's no question the Secretary of State has abused the financial services industry, and it is one of the bright stars in this state. We're #2 behind New York, and we have a much lower operating cost of living here, and this is an industry we need to foster. What I think up until this present Secretary of State, the past Secretary of States had a group that an informal committee that each of the major firms had a representative on, and when there was a problem, they would run, the Secretary of State would run regulations by them and get their input. One of the biggest assets of the financial firms are people, and every once in a while people get off of the reservation and they have to be brought back. But you don't pick out the firms and crucify them. You correct the problems that you've got, and I think if you have the advice these firms want high quality. They want a high quality reputation, and we need, as we institute regulations or have problems, we need to correct that. Let them run it by them, see what it's going to do to the industry, so that you've got kind of a backdrop before you institute regulation. This Secretary of State shut down an industry, went in and made a big national news with it during her Senate campaign. And that was a 3-month, that's an appointment that had been on the books for 3 months. And it sounded like it was she has really punished the industry beyond words, which Scott's exactly right. It's just a shakedown. One group told me that, it was $120,000 a year. They knew they were going to, they didn't know how she was going to get it, but that was their portion. So I think it's an industry that we can encourage and foster. It also, we need to protect investors, but there's ways to do it without crushing the industry.
All right.